My husband walked into our divorce certain he had already won. He took the house, he took the cars, he took every dollar we shared, and I didn't fight him. If you're watching this thinking, why would any woman let that happen? I thought the same thing, right before I signed. Because what he took that day was exactly what would cost him everything later. Let me ask you something before you judge me. If you were 25, newly divorced, and everyone believed you were left with nothing, would you correct them? Or would you let them believe it? I chose silence, and that choice changed everything. I was 25 years old when the papers were finalized. People say that number like it explains everything, like youth automatically means foolishness. But what no one talks about is how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who's young and quiet. I sat in that lawyer's office looking calm, too calm. White walls, polished table, my husband across from me, relaxed, confident, barely listening. His lawyer listed what he would be retaining, and each word landed heavier than the last. The house, the properties, the accounts, the investments, everything we'd built. When the lawyer finally stopped and looked at me, waiting for anger, tears, resistance, I nodded. And if you'd seen my husband's face in that moment, you would have thought the story was over. That's what everyone else thought too. I met him when I was 22. Yes, I was young. Yes, I was beautiful. And yes, I already lived a life most people dream about. Luxury wasn't new to me. I grew up around it. I knew how to enter a room without needing attention. That's what attracted him. I wasn't impressed by his money or his status. I didn't chase him. Men like that don't fall for desperation. They fall for ease. He liked that I trusted him, that I didn't challenge his decisions, that I let him handle things. And at first, it felt safe. But here's something no one tells you. Control doesn't start with commands. It starts with convenience. I didn't need to work, he said. I didn't need to worry, he said. Everything was already taken care of. My name wasn't on accounts. Contracts passed through me, not to me. Every time I asked about something, he smiled like I was asking an innocent question. Why stress yourself? He'd say. Slowly, my independence faded into the background, not because it was taken, but because it was discouraged. And when you're young and in love, you confuse that for trust. The divorce didn't come with shouting. It came with preparation. One evening, he told me he wanted to end the marriage. Calm voice, clear plan, lawyers already involved. He explained how clean it would be, how simple, and then he slid the papers toward me. If you've ever read legal documents meant to end your life as you know it, you'll understand this part. Your name looks unfamiliar. Your future feels small, and the words fair settlement don't feel fair at all. I asked him one question. What happens if I don't sign? He didn't hesitate. It gets messy. That was the first honest thing he'd said in a long time. So I signed. Not because I was weak, not because I was scared, but because I was paying attention. While he focused on what he could see, I focused on what he ignored. And that difference would matter more than any courtroom fight. When the divorce became public, people reacted exactly how you'd expect. Shock, pity, judgment. They said I'd been played, that he was generous for letting me go, that I was young enough to recover. They didn't know how closely I was listening, because when people think you've lost everything, they stop hiding the truth. And my husband talked. I left with one suitcase. No furniture, no artwork, no jewelry, just clothes, documents, and knowledge. As I closed that door behind me, I knew something no one else did. He thought the divorce was over, but it wasn't. It was just quiet, and silence can be very expensive. If you think I made a mistake by not fighting him, wait until you hear why I stayed silent in court and what that silence allowed me to do next. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. If you were watching this story from the outside, wouldn't you assume I was scared? Most people do. They imagine a young woman sitting quietly while her husband's lawyers circle like sharks. They picture fear, confusion, weakness. That assumption is exactly why I didn't correct anyone. Because fear looks a lot like patience when you don't understand the plan. The day we went back to court for final signatures, I wore the simplest dress I owned. No jewelry, no makeup that stood out, nothing expensive. I wanted to look small. You might think that sounds strange, but there is power in being underestimated, especially when everyone in the room already believes you've lost. The courtroom was quiet. My husband sat confidently beside his lawyer, legs crossed, relaxed posture, checking his phone like this was just another appointment on his calendar. I sat alone. No lawyer next to me, no support. And people noticed. I saw the looks. She didn't even bring representation. She really gave up. What they didn't know was that every move I made was deliberate. When the judge asked if I understood the agreement, I said yes. When asked if I was signing voluntarily, I said yes. No hesitation, no emotion. That part confused my husband. I could tell. He glanced at me twice, maybe expecting tears or resistance. When he didn't get it, his confidence grew. And that was dangerous for him, because confidence makes people careless. Here's the truth most people never consider. I didn't fight him in court, because court wasn't where the real battle was. Court is loud, court is slow, court creates records everyone can see, and I didn't want attention. I wanted access. People assume divorces are about money. They're not. They're about information. And during our marriage, I had learned exactly where my husband was careless. He underestimated me long before the divorce ever happened. Let me explain something important. When you live with someone who believes they're smarter than you, they stop hiding things. Not because they're honest, but because they don't think you're capable of understanding. He talked freely around me, on the phone, at dinner, late at night. He assumed I wasn't listening. I always was. Numbers, names, dates. I didn't challenge him. I didn't ask questions that would expose my awareness. I let him believe I didn't understand. That was my advantage. So when the divorce began, I already knew something he didn't. I knew where fighting would hurt me and where staying quiet would hurt him later. And that's why I signed. After the final hearing, people congratulated him. They shook his hand, complimented how clean the divorce was handled. Some even joked about how lucky he was. He smiled through all of it. I didn't stay long. I walked out without speaking to anyone, because the more invisible I was, the safer I became. The days after the divorce were strange. No calls, no messages, no explanations. It felt like my entire marriage had been erased overnight. And maybe that's what he wanted. I moved into a modest apartment across town. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. I paid rent myself, bought groceries myself, and learned what it meant to exist without luxury cushioning every moment. And while people thought I was rebuilding from nothing, I was organizing. Here's something I need you to understand. Revenge isn't loud. It's patient, and it doesn't announce itself. While my husband celebrated his win, I was quietly reconnecting dots. Emails I remembered, documents I had copied, conversations I replayed. Things that meant nothing to me back then suddenly mattered. And slowly, a pattern emerged, one he thought no one had noticed. About 3 weeks after the divorce, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then it rang again. Same number. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened, it was his voice. Not angry, not confident, uneasy. Hey, I just had a quick question. Call me when you can. That was the first crack. If you've ever known someone truly powerful, you know they don't ask questions lightly. They don't reach out unless something feels off. And something did. But I didn't call back. Not yet, because timing matters. Instead, I waited, and the waiting did something interesting. It made him uncomfortable. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was distracted, irritable, short-tempered. The man who thought he had everything suddenly felt like something was missing, and the worst part, he didn't know what. Let me pause here and ask you this. If you were him, what would scare you more? Losing money or realizing you underestimated the wrong person. A week later, he called again. This time, he left a longer message. More casual, too casual. I just want to make sure everything's fine. Everything. That word told me everything I needed to know. Because when someone takes everything from you and still checks to see if you're okay, it's not concern, it's fear. I finally called him back. Short conversation, polite, calm. I thanked him for checking in, told him I was adjusting, said nothing else. He tried to fill the silence, asked about my apartment, my plans. I gave him nothing. And when I hung up, I knew the balance had shifted. He didn't feel like a winner anymore. But the real turning point, that came a few days later, when I received a message that wasn't meant for me at all. And that message would change everything. Before I tell you about the message, let me ask you something. Have you ever learned the truth by accident? Not because someone confessed, not because you went looking, but because someone got careless. That's how this began. A few days after I spoke to my husband on the phone, life went quiet again. No calls, no texts, no apologies. And honestly, that silence felt intentional, like he was trying to convince himself that the uneasiness he felt was nothing, that the divorce was done, that I was no longer relevant. People do that when they sense a problem but don't want to face it. They ignore it and hope it disappears. I didn't disappear. I stayed very still. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, I received a notification from an unfamiliar email address. No subject line, just a short message. At first, I assumed it was spam. Then I opened it and froze. The message was brief, almost careless. A forwarded email thread. Names I recognized, numbers I definitely recognized, and one sentence that made my stomach drop. Make sure she doesn't still have access. She. That was me. I read it again, slowly. The message wasn't threatening. It wasn't dramatic. That's what made it terrifying. It was procedural, like something routine. Like I was a loose end someone had just remembered to tie up. Here's the strange part. The email wasn't sent to me. It was forwarded to me by mistake. Someone had typed one letter wrong in the address. One letter. That's all it took. I didn't respond. I didn't panic. I did something much more important. I took screenshots. Every line, every name, every timestamp. Then I closed the email and pretended I'd never seen it. Because panic would have warned them. Silence would protect me. If you've ever been underestimated, you know this feeling. That quiet moment when you realize the other side has no idea what you're capable of. My husband didn't know I had that message, and I was going to keep it that way. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because my mind was working too fast. I replayed conversations from our marriage, casual comments, late-night phone calls he thought I wasn't paying attention to, files he left open on his laptop, names he mentioned without context. Suddenly, those moments lined up, and I saw something clearly for the first time. The divorce wasn't just about separating lives, it was about control. And control, once threatened, makes people reckless. The next morning, I did something that probably saved me. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't confront him. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I opened a notebook and started writing. Dates, names, companies, locations. I wrote everything I remembered. Because memory fades, but patterns don't. As the list grew, so did my understanding. He wasn't afraid I'd take money. He was afraid I'd take knowledge. And knowledge is harder to steal back. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. Another message. This one from him. Hey, random question. You didn't forward anything to yourself from my old email? My heart slowed. That question told me everything. He knew something had gone wrong. He just didn't know how badly. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Then I typed 3 words. No. Why? That was it. Nothing more, and in those 3 words, I felt the shift completely. Because now, he wasn't confident, he was checking. Here's something people don't talk about enough. When someone believes they've taken everything from you, they relax. But when they realize you might still have something, they unravel. Over the next few days, I noticed changes. Mutual friends stopped reaching out. People who used to invite me places suddenly avoided me. At first, it hurt. Then I realized what was happening. He was controlling the narrative. Again, trying to isolate me, trying to limit what I could hear. That told me I was closer to the truth than he wanted. Let me ask you this. If you had already won, would you need to silence someone who walked away quietly? No, you'd only do that if you were afraid they hadn't really lost. I decided it was time to test something. Not confrontational, subtle. I posted a photo online. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet image of me working at a desk. No caption, no explanation. Within minutes, my phone rang. He didn't leave a voicemail this time. He just hung up. That was confirmation. He was watching, and he was nervous. I want you to understand something important here. At no point did I plan revenge. This wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. Because once you realize someone took more than they should have, you stop thinking about fairness. You start thinking about survival. That night, I opened the forwarded email again, and this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. A document name attached at the bottom. Something I recognized, something he once told me didn't matter, something he had taken in the divorce, without hesitation. And in that moment, I finally understood the title of this story. What he took wasn't money, it wasn't property, it was something he believed was worthless, and that belief was his biggest mistake. Before I tell you what the document was, let me slow this down for a moment. Because if you're still watching, it means you probably think this story is about money. That's what everyone thought, and that's exactly why he made the mistake he did. The document was old. Not dramatic, not flashy, no bold titles or obvious value, just a plain file name buried at the bottom of an email thread. The kind of thing people skim past when they're focused on bigger prizes. I recognized it immediately. Not because I understood it back then, but because I remembered the way he dismissed it. He used to call it administrative nonsense. Boring stuff, he'd say. Nothing you need to worry about. And like everything else he labeled boring, he assumed it was beneath me. During the marriage, I'd seen versions of this document before. Printed once, scanned twice, saved in 3 different places. That should have been a red flag. But when you're told something doesn't matter often enough, you stop questioning why it keeps reappearing. Until now. I opened my notebook and wrote the file name at the top of a page. Then I wrote every time I remembered seeing it. A meeting he rushed through, a call he took outside, a weekend he suddenly needed to travel for work. One by one, the memories aligned, and I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, understanding. Here's what most people don't realize. The most valuable things are rarely obvious. They're quiet, technical, easy to overlook if you're focused on lifestyle and appearances. My husband wasn't careless. He was arrogant. He assumed ownership meant control. He assumed because his name was on everything, no one else could touch it. That assumption had shaped our entire marriage, and now it was shaping his downfall. I didn't open the document. Not yet. Instead, I asked myself a different question. Why was he suddenly worried about my access? Why now? The divorce was finalized. He had everything. There was no reason to be concerned unless something depended on my silence. The next few days confirmed it. He called again. Casual tone, forced friendliness. He asked if I'd settled in, if I needed anything, if I was doing okay. When I thanked him and kept my answers vague, he sounded relieved. Too relieved, like someone checking whether a door they'd forgotten to lock was still closed. Here's something I want you to notice. He never asked what I was working on. He never asked where I was spending my time. People who believe you're powerless don't think to ask those questions. People who are afraid do. I decided to do something risky. I reached out to someone from his professional circle, not directly connected to him, someone peripheral, someone he wouldn't suspect. We met for coffee. I didn't ask about him. I talked about myself, about starting over, about feeling lost, about trying to understand the world I'd been married into. People love to explain things to someone they believe doesn't know much, and explain they did. In between casual comments, I heard it, a familiar term, the same one from the document, said lightly, almost jokingly. My heart stayed calm. My mind did not. I didn't react. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I let the conversation drift, because curiosity can expose you. Silence protects you. When I got home, I finally opened the document, line by line, slowly, carefully. At first, it didn't make sense. Technical language, references to entities I didn't recognize, clauses buried inside clauses. But then I saw it. My name, not as an owner, not as a beneficiary, as something else entirely, something he never expected to matter. I sat there for a long time staring at the screen, because suddenly the divorce made sense. Why he rushed it, why he wanted everything, why he wanted me quiet. He hadn't taken everything. He had taken the wrong things. Let me ask you something. If you were him and you believed you'd stripped someone of all power, would you ever imagine they still held the key? Because that's what I realized in that moment. I wasn't empty-handed. I was holding leverage. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't anxiety. It was strategy. Because once you understand what someone values most, you understand how fragile their confidence really is. And my husband's confidence was built on one dangerous belief, that I didn't understand the world he lived in. He was wrong. The next morning, I received another message from him. Short, polite, controlled. Just checking in again. Everything okay? I stared at the screen and smiled, because now I knew. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking on the document.
I never expected that a simple dinner could turn into a night of revelations. After that stormy confrontation with my lawyer, I went home feeling hollow, as if the floor beneath me had vanished. My apartment, everything I had carefully curated, suddenly felt alien. I walked through the hall, my heels clicking against the marble floor, and the echo seemed to mock me. I was alone, completely alone. I sank into my cream-colored sofa, staring at the shimmering city lights outside the window, and tried to collect my thoughts. The divorce was final, and he, my ex-husband, had taken almost everything. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything I had built over the last 5 years, gone. And yet, deep down, a nagging feeling told me that he didn't understand what he had really taken. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old photos. Moments of laughter, of joy, of us in vacations I had arranged so meticulously. And I realized that these memories, these fragments of my life, were the one thing he could never truly claim. He could take my assets, but he could not erase my experiences, my independence, my strength. That realization sparked something inside me, a quiet fury that demanded action. The next morning, I woke early, feeling restless. I had an idea, a plan that would turn the tables in ways he could never anticipate. First, I needed to rebuild my life, but this time on my terms. I started small, returning to the things I loved but had neglected during our marriage. My art collection, my private yoga sessions, even the little weekend trips to the countryside. Each step reminded me that wealth is not just about money. It's about freedom, creativity, and control over your own destiny. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While organizing old files in my apartment, I stumbled upon something I had overlooked, a ledger of investments, contracts, and properties we had jointly owned. To my shock, some of these were legally still under my name. Subtle, hidden clauses that my ex-husband never noticed gave me leverage. My pulse quickened as I realized that the divorce had, unknowingly, left him blind to key assets. I knew I had to tread carefully. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, proving to myself and to him that intelligence and foresight matter more than brute force. I started contacting advisors, arranging discreet meetings, and quietly mapping out a strategy. Every step required patience. Every decision demanded precision. One wrong move, and he could catch wind of my plan. But more than the legal battle, I discovered an unexpected liberation. For the first time, I felt truly in control. Not over him, not over his mistakes, but over myself. I was free from the shadows of a marriage that had confined me, free from a man who had underestimated me, free to reclaim my life in ways he would never imagine. That night, as I stood on the balcony, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, I made a silent vow. He may have taken everything he could see, but I would take back what truly mattered: my power, my future, and my story. Little did he know, the real game was just beginning, and I intended to win, not with anger, but with the quiet, unwavering confidence of someone who knows their worth.
Stories her heart holds. Welcome back. I never thought a divorce could feel like losing not just a husband, but the life we built together, the life I thought was untouchable. He took everything, and yet the way he left it all made my chest tighten with disbelief. I remember waking that morning to the soft hum of the espresso machine he used to boast about, the one that used to make mornings feel like a Paris cafe. I poured a cup, hands trembling, staring out at the skyline from our penthouse balcony. Everything looked perfect, everything except my life. The lawyer had called again, his voice calm but firm, telling me the final papers were ready. I glanced at the walls, each one adorned with memories, art from our trips to Venice, photographs of our smiles in Tuscany, the crystal chandelier over the dining table that had once impressed everyone who walked in. All of it now belonged to him. I walked through the marble-floored hallway, touching the expensive rugs that had been a wedding gift from his parents, the silk curtains that filtered the sunlight just right, thinking how easily beauty could become a cage. My reflection in the full-length mirror startled me. The woman staring back wasn't sure if she was furious, devastated, or numb. Maybe all three. Then a knock at the door. It was Jessica, the housekeeper who had been with us for over 15 years. Her eyes were kind but cautious. "I brought some documents you might need," she said softly, handing me a stack. Insurance statements, bank transfers, and my stomach dropped. A letter from him with no signature, only the words, "Don't fight this. It's over." I sank into the velvet armchair in the living room, the city lights beginning to blink on outside, and felt an anger so sharp it was almost physical. He thought taking material things would break me, but I realized as I sifted through the papers that the real story was hidden in the numbers, in the tiny transfers and accounts he assumed I wouldn't notice. That night, I sat at the grand piano, the same one he used to play when he wanted to charm me, and let the notes float through the apartment. Each key echoed my disbelief, my grief, my resolve. I wasn't going to disappear quietly, no matter how much he tried to erase me. And then, as if on cue, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "I know what he did. Meet me, midnight, Hotel Vendôme. Come alone." My hands shook, not just from fear, but from the rush of hope I hadn't allowed myself in months. Someone knew, someone had proof, and maybe, just maybe, I could finally fight back. That night, I barely slept. The city lights outside our penthouse seemed brighter than ever, mocking me with their normalcy while my world had fallen apart. My hands kept hovering over the phone, reading that mysterious message again and again. "I know what he did. Meet me, midnight, Hotel Vendôme. Come alone." I changed dresses 3 times, each one feeling like armor. The silk gown I had worn to our anniversary dinner now felt like a costume for a battle I hadn't yet planned. My heels clicked on the marble floors as I left the apartment, each step echoing louder than the last. I felt exposed and vulnerable, but I refused to let fear rule me. Not tonight. The taxi ride through the city was surreal. Neon signs flickered past, but I barely noticed them. My mind raced. Who could this person be? A friend? An enemy? Or someone who had been quietly watching the way my husband manipulated everything around us? When I arrived at Hotel Vendôme, its golden facade gleamed in the moonlight. I paused at the entrance, clutching my purse like a shield. The lobby was empty, silent except for the distant hum of an elevator. My eyes scanned every shadow, every reflection in the polished marble floors. Then I saw him, a man in a gray suit, mid-40s, eyes sharp, standing near the concierge desk. "You came," he said, his voice low but urgent. "I received your message," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady, hiding the tremor in my hands. He handed me a thick envelope. "Everything you need to know about him, your husband, is in here, but be careful. He isn't who you think." I opened it in the privacy of the hotel lounge. Bank statements hidden in offshore accounts, emails between him and a lawyer I had never heard of, and photos that made my stomach turn. They were pictures of him signing documents while pretending to be in business meetings, but the transactions were clearly siphoning funds from me. My breath caught as I realized the full scope of the betrayal. He hadn't just taken the house, the cars, the jewelry. He had meticulously drained me of everything he could, leaving me to believe it was only a divorce. And the worst part? Everyone else thought I was foolish to fight him. Everyone except this man. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because someone has to, and because he underestimated you." I felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. I wasn't powerless, not yet. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous it became. Each revelation pulled me further into a world of deception and greed I had never imagined existed, even in my husband's high society life. And then, just as I was processing everything, my phone vibrated again. Another message, this one chilling, simple and direct. "You're getting too close. Stop now or you'll regret it." My hands tightened around the envelope. Fear mixed with fury. He thought he could intimidate me. He thought taking everything would silence me. But now, armed with the truth, I felt something I hadn't in months. Power. And I wasn't done yet. The warning message burned in my mind as I left the hotel. The streets seemed quieter than usual, the city holding its breath as if it knew what was coming. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step heavier than the last, but I refused to turn back. I had come too far to be intimidated. Back in the apartment, everything felt smaller, colder. The chandelier over the dining table, the expensive rugs, the polished silver, once symbols of comfort, now reminded me of the life he had stolen. I spread the documents across the kitchen island, every detail of his deceit staring at me. Offshore accounts, hidden properties, forged contracts. He had planned this for years, and I had been blind. I sank into the leather chair, trying to catch my breath, when the phone rang. My heart skipped. Caller ID, unknown. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Don't trust anyone," a voice hissed, "especially him. He has eyes everywhere, even those you think are friends." The line went dead. My pulse raced. I realized then that this wasn't just a divorce, it was a war, and he had already set traps I couldn't yet see. Determined, I decided I needed allies. The man from Hotel Vendôme had given me a name, Adrian Cole, a private investigator who had been watching my husband's moves for months. I dialed the number he had left. "Mrs. Harrison," Adrian said without greeting, "I've been expecting your call. You've got to understand, this man doesn't play fair. If he thinks you're weak, he'll crush you." "I'm not weak," I said, surprising even myself, "and I want to fight." He paused. "Good, but this will cost you. He's ruthless, and he's used to getting everything he wants. If you're ready, meet me tomorrow. I'll show you what he's done and what he's planning next." That night, sleep eluded me. I wandered through the rooms of our penthouse, my fingers tracing the silk curtains, the marble counters, the expensive art. Each item whispered memories, but now they also reminded me of betrayal. I thought about the life he had carefully curated, the way he presented himself to the world as the perfect husband, the perfect businessman. Everything was a mask. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't let fear control me. He had underestimated me, and that was his first mistake. I met Adrian in a small cafe downtown, far from the penthouse and prying eyes. He handed me a file thicker than I expected, filled with evidence that could ruin my husband completely. Photographs, transaction records, confidential emails, and even recordings of conversations where he mocked me behind my back. "This is only the beginning," Adrian said, his tone grave. "If you want justice, you need to be prepared. He will fight back harder than ever." I looked at the stack of papers, feeling the weight of months of betrayal pressing down on me. Yet beneath that weight, something fierce was stirring. Rage, determination, a desire to reclaim not just my possessions, but my life. And then, a text pinged on my phone. Simple, terrifying, and direct. "Stop digging, or everything you love will disappear." I stared at the screen, feeling the fear and fury collide inside me. He thought he could control me. He thought he had already won. But now, armed with the truth and with allies I could trust, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Stories her heart holds. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm. Every call, every message, every glance over my shoulder reminded me that he was still out there, orchestrating his schemes while pretending nothing was wrong. But I was ready. I had the proof, and I had a plan. Adrian and I met daily in quiet cafes, poring over bank statements, emails, and photographs. Every new detail felt like peeling back another layer of a mask I thought I knew so well. He had hidden millions in accounts I had no idea existed, properties under shell companies, contracts forged with signatures that weren't mine. He had taken everything, yet he had underestimated one thing: my resolve. One afternoon, while reviewing documents, a thought struck me. There was a recurring name, someone close to him, someone I had trusted. I felt my chest tighten as the realization sank in. A betrayal on top of a betrayal. My heart ached, not just from losing him, but from the shock that someone in my circle had aided him. That evening, I returned to the apartment, my heels clicking on the marble floors, the city skyline glowing like a distant battlefield. I poured myself a glass of wine, trying to steady my nerves. The velvet sofa, the silk curtains, the expensive art, all seemed to mock me with their quiet perfection. He had taken the tangible things, but I realized now the intangible was mine to reclaim. My dignity, my fury, my mind. Then, a knock at the door. My heart raced. Visitors were rare. I opened it to find Jessica, our longtime housekeeper, eyes wide with worry. "Mrs. Harrison, you need to see this," she whispered, handing me a folded envelope. Inside were photographs of him meeting someone late at night, exchanging documents, smiling as if everything was a game. But there was something else, evidence that linked him to actions far worse than just financial betrayal. I sank into the armchair, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. He had thought he could hide everything behind wealth and charm, but now the cracks were showing. The next day, Adrian and I followed a lead from the photographs. It took us to one of his properties, a luxurious estate with manicured lawns and gates that screamed power and secrecy. From a distance, we watched him meet with an associate, documents in hand. The audacity of it made my blood boil. This was the man who had promised love, partnership, and loyalty and had turned it all into manipulation, greed, and control. I felt a surge of determination. I wasn't just fighting for what he had taken, I was fighting for justice, for truth, and for the life I refused to lose. That night, back in the apartment, I looked over the city, lights twinkling innocently, unaware of the storm raging in my life. My phone pinged again, another message from an unknown number. "He's watching you. Be careful who you trust." I stared at it, hands trembling, but this time with purpose. Fear would not rule me. He had underestimated me for the last time. And I knew, with a certainty that felt like fire in my veins, that the next move had to be mine.
The next morning, I woke with a determination that felt heavier than the penthouse chandelier overhead. I had spent months in quiet despair, watching him take everything I loved. And now the time for patience was over. Every luxurious detail around me, the silk curtains, marble floors, polished silver, reminded me of what I had lost. But they also reminded me what I was fighting for, not just possessions, but dignity. Adrian and I planned our next move carefully. We couldn't act recklessly. He was always 3 steps ahead. But this time, I intended to surprise him. We traced one of his secret accounts to a hidden property outside the city, an abandoned estate, or so it seemed from public records. Inside, the evidence suggested a life of deception far beyond my imagination. Falsified documents, cash transfers, even emails indicating he had manipulated friends and family to cover his tracks. I felt a mix of horror and satisfaction. Horror at the extent of his deceit, and satisfaction knowing that every lie he had crafted was now coming to light. Adrian looked at me with a sharp expression. "If we move carefully, we can expose everything," he said, "but you must be strong. This will get messy." I nodded, thinking of the penthouse I once called home, of the dinners, the parties, the endless promises that had been hollow. I poured myself a cup of espresso, the aroma filling the kitchen like a small comfort in the storm. And then the phone rang. Unknown number. "Meet me, tonight. Private address, bring no one," the voice said, clipped and serious. Then, click. My stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed danger, but my resolve only hardened. I knew I couldn't back down. Not now, not ever. He had taken everything he thought mattered, and yet he had underestimated my courage. That night, I dressed carefully, sleek, understated, elegant. The penthouse seemed colder than usual as I left, the city lights glaring like witnesses to my journey. I drove alone, each turn deliberate, every red light a heartbeat in a symphony of tension. The address led me to a luxurious but secluded villa. High walls, heavy gates, the kind of place where secrets were kept and sins hidden. I slipped inside quietly, heart hammering. Shadows moved in the candlelit halls, but no one spoke. Then, at the far end, I saw him, standing, composed, a smug smile on his face, as if he had been waiting for this very moment. "Finally," he said smoothly, "I wondered when you'd show up." "Don't think you can intimidate me," I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "You've taken everything, but I'm not finished." He laughed softly, that cold, practiced laugh that once charmed me. "Everything? My dear, you think you know the meaning of everything? You've only just scratched the surface." The air between us crackled. I felt years of betrayal, anger, and grief surge through me, but also clarity. I wasn't the naive woman he had married. I wasn't powerless, and tonight he would finally see that. Standing in that grand, dimly lit villa, I felt the weight of every betrayal press down on me. The chandeliers glimmered above, a cruel mockery of the life he had stolen, while shadows played across his smug face. Every polished surface, every expensive piece of furniture reminded me how meticulously he had built his perfect facade, and how carefully he had tried to erase me from it.
"You really think you can fight me?" he said, stepping closer. His voice was smooth, confident, but I noticed a flicker in his eyes, a hesitation he didn't intend to show. "I don't think," I said, taking a deep breath. "I know." I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick folder Adrian had given me. I opened it and laid it on the marble table. Bank transfers, secret accounts, forged contracts, emails showing his manipulation of friends and family, all evidence of a life built on lies. His smile faltered. "Where did you get this?" "Someone who actually knows you," I said. "Someone who sees what you really are." The smug composure I had come to loathe was cracking. His eyes darted, searching, calculating. For the first time, I saw fear, or maybe just the realization that he had underestimated me. "You think these papers will destroy me?" he said, voice tighter than before. "I've covered my tracks too well. You'll never—" "Never what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Never expose you? You underestimated me once, and you're underestimating me again. I've seen the truth, and now so will everyone else." I watched him closely, the years of betrayal boiling inside me. I remembered the penthouse, the silk curtains, the polished silver, all of it now tainted by deceit. But I realized something crucial. He could take possessions, he could spread lies, but he could never take my resolve. My dignity, my mind, my courage, these were mine to keep. "You've underestimated me the last time, and now it's your turn to be afraid." For a moment, silence. Then the tension snapped like a taut wire. He lunged for the folder, but I had anticipated it, stepping back with calm precision. Every move I had rehearsed in my mind for weeks now came alive. "Stop," he hissed, suddenly realizing I wasn't the woman he could manipulate anymore. "This changes nothing." But it did. It changed everything. I had the proof, I had the courage, and I had allies. The life he had built on lies was cratting, and I was watching it crumble before me. "You've taken everything from me," I said, voice shaking but strong. "But I'm taking back my life, and everyone will see who you really are." He stared, silent now, the weight of exposure pressing down on him. For the first time, he wasn't in control. For the first time, the woman he had tried to break was standing taller than he ever could. The silence in the villa was deafening. He stared at me, the weight of everything crashing down on him. For years, he had built a life on manipulation, lies, and control. But now I held the truth, the undeniable proof of his deceit. I gathered the folder, feeling its weight in my hands. It wasn't just paper, it was my reclamation, my armor, my victory over the man who had taken everything he thought he could. "You think you've won," he said, voice tight, almost a whisper. "You'll see." "I've already won," I interrupted, eyes blazing. "Not with money, not with possessions, but with this." I tapped the folder. "With truth. You can't charm it away, hide it, or bribe it. Everyone will know who you really are." For the first time, he looked small, vulnerable, exposed. The arrogance that had once dominated our home, our lives, our every interaction crumbled before me. I felt a rush of relief, tempered by anger and sorrow, knowing that while I could reclaim my dignity, the years he stole from me could never return. Over the next few weeks, with Adrian's help, the evidence was presented to the authorities and key people in his business and social circles. Friends and colleagues I thought were loyal to him were shocked. His empire of lies unraveled, and I watched from the sidelines as the man who had once held all the power was forced to face the consequences of his greed. Returning to the penthouse was bittersweet. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the silk curtains, they were still luxurious, still beautiful, but they no longer represented the life I had lost. They represented resilience, strength, the life I had fought to reclaim. I sat by the window one evening, city lights shimmering below, and felt a calm I hadn't known in months. I had been robbed of material things, yes, but I had not been robbed of myself. My dignity, my courage, and my voice had survived. And in the end, that mattered more than anything. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. I sent a message to the unknown ally who had first guided me. We did it. Thank you for everything. And as I set the phone down, I realized something profound. Losing everything had almost destroyed me, but reclaiming myself had made me stronger than I ever imagined. Sometimes the life you thought was gone forever can return, not in possessions, not in wealth, but in the fierce, unbreakable spirit that no one can take away. And I knew with every fiber of my being that I would never let anyone diminish me again.